The Organized Mind, a 7-day blueprint for discipline, order, and success, published by Profound Audiobook. Introduction. An organized mind is one of the greatest advantages a person can possess. It brings clarity when life feels complicated, direction when distractions pull in every direction, and confidence when uncertainty appears. Success is often associated with talent, intelligence, or opportunity, but beneath every lasting achievement lies something much simpler: the ability to create order where others allow chaos to grow. The quality of your life is shaped by the quality of your decisions, and the quality of your decisions depends heavily on the condition of your mind. When your thoughts are scattered, your priorities become unclear. When your priorities are unclear, your actions become inconsistent. Over time, this creates frustration, stress, and the feeling that life is always one step ahead of you. Yet the opposite is equally true. When your mind becomes organized, your actions become purposeful. Your days gain structure. Your energy is directed toward what matters most. Progress stops being accidental and starts becoming predictable. This audiobook is not about perfection. It is not about color-coded schedules, complicated productivity systems, or squeezing every minute out of the day. It is about building a practical framework for living with greater discipline, order, and intention. It is about learning how to think clearly, act consistently, and create systems that support the life you want to build. In this audiobook, we will explore how to clear mental clutter, take ownership of your choices, design environments that encourage success, build reliable systems, strengthen discipline, and create habits that stand firm even during difficult seasons of life. Step by step, chapter by chapter, you will discover a blueprint that can help transform confusion into clarity, busyness into purpose, and effort into meaningful results. The journey begins with the mind, because every organized life starts with an organized way of thinking. Chapter 1. Empty your mind of hidden noise. An organized life begins long before a calendar is updated, a desk is cleaned, or a schedule is created. It begins in the mind. Every action you take, every decision you make, and every habit you repeat is influenced by what is happening inside your head. When the mind is clear, life feels manageable. When the mind is crowded with unfinished thoughts, worries, reminders, and distractions, even simple tasks can feel exhausting. This is why the first step toward discipline, order, and success is not organizing your surroundings. It is organizing your thinking. Many people move through their days carrying far more mental weight than they realize. A forgotten phone call, an unfinished project, a bill that needs to be paid, a goal that has been postponed, a conversation that didn't go well, a problem that still needs a solution. Each one occupies a small corner of the mind. On its own, none of these things seems overwhelming. Together, however, they create constant mental noise. That noise quietly drains attention, steals focus, and makes it difficult to fully engage with the present moment. The mind becomes like a room filled with clutter. You can still move around, but every step requires more effort than it should. One of the greatest misconceptions about productivity is the belief that successful people simply have more energy, more discipline, or better self-control than everyone else. In reality, many successful people have simply learned how to reduce mental clutter. They understand that the brain is a powerful tool for thinking, solving problems, and creating ideas, but it is a poor storage system. The more information you try to hold in your mind, the less mental space remains for clear thinking. When your brain is constantly trying to remember everything, it becomes harder to focus on anything. Consider Cameron Ellis, a cybersecurity consultant who spent years feeling overwhelmed despite being highly capable. His days were filled with meetings, client requests, technical problems, and personal responsibilities. Every morning he woke up already thinking about 10 different things he needed to remember. Throughout the day, new tasks appeared faster than he could complete them. By evening, he felt mentally exhausted, yet he couldn't stop thinking about what still needed to be done. The problem was not a lack of intelligence or effort. The problem was that he was carrying everything in his head. Once he began capturing tasks, ideas, and commitments in a trusted system, instead of relying on memory, he noticed something surprising. His workload had not changed, but his stress level dropped dramatically. His mind finally had room to breathe. The lesson is simple but powerful. You do not need to remember everything. You need a reliable place to store what matters. Whether it is a notebook, a planner, a digital app, or a simple sheet of paper, the method is less important than the habit itself. Every time you move a task, idea, or concern out of your mind and into a trusted system, you free up mental energy for more important work. Instead of carrying reminders, you can focus on action. Instead of worrying about forgetting something, you can give your full attention to what is in front of you. Another source of hidden noise comes from unfinished decisions. Many people spend weeks, months, or even years mentally revisiting the same choices. Should I start that project? Should I make that change? Should I have that conversation? Every unresolved decision quietly consumes attention. Organized minds do not necessarily make perfect decisions, but they make decisions. They understand that clarity often comes through action, not endless contemplation. The longer a decision remains suspended, the longer it occupies valuable mental space. As you move forward through this audiobook, remember that organization is not merely about creating external order. It is about creating internal clarity. Before you can organize your schedule, you must organize your thoughts. Before you can direct your time, you must direct your attention. Before you can build a disciplined life, you must first quiet the hidden noise that competes for space in your mind. An organized mind is not empty because there is nothing to do. It is clear because it knows exactly what deserves attention and what does not. Chapter 2. Stop living on autopilot. An organized mind does not happen by accident. It is built through conscious choices made day after day. Yet many people move through life without realizing how much of their behavior is being controlled by habit, routine, and unconscious patterns. They wake up at the same time, follow the same routines, react to the same problems, and repeat the same thoughts, often without questioning whether those patterns are helping or hurting them. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into years, and before long, life begins to feel repetitive. Progress slows, motivation fades, and a sense of frustration quietly settles in. The reason is simple. It is difficult to create an organized life when you are operating on autopilot. Living on autopilot means allowing circumstances to dictate your actions instead of making deliberate decisions. It means reacting instead of directing. It means letting distractions determine where your attention goes, allowing emotions to control your responses, and permitting old habits to shape your future. Autopilot is comfortable because it requires little effort. The brain naturally seeks efficiency, and routines help conserve energy. However, when those routines are not examined, they can lead you somewhere you never intended to go. One of the greatest dangers of autopilot is that it creates the illusion of movement. You can stay busy every day and still make little meaningful progress. You can work hard, handle responsibilities, and check off tasks while remaining stuck in the same place year after year. Activity and progress are not the same thing. Progress requires intention. It requires stepping back from your daily routines and asking yourself an important question. Is the way I am living today leading me toward the life I want tomorrow? This question can be uncomfortable because it forces honesty. It requires you to look beyond excuses and circumstances. It asks you to examine your habits, your choices, and your priorities. True organization begins with ownership. The moment you accept responsibility for the direction of your life, you gain the power to change it. As long as someone else is responsible for your results, someone else controls your future. But when you take ownership, even of the things you cannot completely control, you place yourself back in the driver's seat. Consider Derek Lawson, a retail operations manager who felt trapped in a cycle of frustration. He often complained about his workload, his schedule, and the lack of opportunities available to him. He believed his stress came from external circumstances. His company was demanding, his team was understaffed, his days felt chaotic. Yet when he honestly examined his routine, he discovered something important. He spent large portions of each day reacting to problems instead of preventing them. He rarely planned ahead. He postponed difficult decisions. He allowed urgent tasks to constantly interrupt important ones. Over time, he realized that while he could not control every challenge he faced, he could control how he responded to those challenges. That realization changed everything. By becoming more intentional with his time and decisions, he gradually created more order in both his work and personal life. The same principle applies to every area of life. Organized people are not necessarily those with fewer problems. They are often people who have decided to stop waiting for perfect conditions. They understand that responsibility is not about blame, it is about ownership. Blame focuses on the past and searches for reasons why things happened. Ownership focuses on the future and searches for ways to improve what happens next. This mindset shift is powerful because it transforms you from a passive participant into an active creator of your life. One way to break free from autopilot is to develop greater awareness. Throughout your day, pay attention to your actions and ask simple questions. Why am I doing this? Is this helping me move toward my goals? Am I acting intentionally or simply following a habit? These questions may seem small, but they create moments of consciousness. They interrupt automatic behavior and allow you to make better choices. The more aware you become, the more control you gain. Another important step is learning to pause before reacting. Many people spend their lives responding automatically to circumstances. A difficult email arrives and they become frustrated. A problem appears and they immediately assume the worst. An obstacle emerges and they feel discouraged. Organized minds learn to create a small space between an event and a response. In that space lies the ability to choose. Instead of reacting emotionally, they respond thoughtfully. Instead of being controlled by circumstances, they remain guided by purpose. The truth is that every organized life is built on intentional living. It is not created through luck, talent, or perfect conditions. It is created when you stop drifting and start directing. Every decision, no matter how small, becomes a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Every intentional action strengthens discipline. Every conscious choice creates more order. Over time, these choices compound, shaping not only your habits, but your identity. As you continue through this journey, remember that organization is not merely about managing tasks or schedules. It is about becoming fully awake to your own life. It is about refusing to let old patterns determine your future. The moment you stop living on autopilot and begin living with intention, you take the first real step toward lasting discipline, meaningful progress, and genuine success. Chapter 3. Build an environment that pulls you forward. Discipline is often treated as the answer to every challenge. When people struggle to stay consistent, they are usually told to become more disciplined, work harder, or strengthen their willpower. While discipline is important, relying on it alone is exhausting. Even the most determined individuals have moments when they feel tired, distracted, or unmotivated. The people who stay consistent over long periods are rarely those who depend entirely on self-control. Instead, they learn how to build environments that make success easier and failure more difficult. Your environment influences your behavior more than you may realize. Every room you enter, every object you see, and every cue surrounding you is quietly shaping your decisions. The places where you spend your time either support your goals or work against them. This influence is subtle, which is why many people overlook it. They focus on changing themselves while ignoring the conditions around them. Yet it is often easier to change your environment than to constantly fight against it. Think about how naturally certain places affect your behavior. A library encourages quiet concentration. A gym encourages physical activity. A crowded entertainment venue encourages social interaction. The environment sends signals, and your brain responds to those signals automatically. This means that if you want to become more organized, focused, and disciplined, you must create surroundings that reinforce those qualities. Success becomes far easier when your environment is working with you rather than against you. One of the biggest obstacles to organization is friction. Friction is anything that makes a positive behavior harder to perform. Sometimes the obstacle is small. A notebook is buried in a drawer. Important documents are scattered across different locations. The workspace is cluttered. The tools needed for productive work are difficult to find. Individually, these inconveniences seem insignificant. Together, they create resistance. Every small obstacle increases the likelihood of procrastination and decreases the likelihood of action. At the same time, negative habits often thrive because they are convenient. Distractions are easily accessible. Entertainment is available with a single tap. Notifications constantly demand attention. When unhealthy or unproductive choices require less effort than productive ones, the brain naturally gravitates toward them. This is not a character flaw. It is simply human nature. People tend to follow the path of least resistance. Wyatt Harper, a remote software engineer, learned this lesson firsthand. Working from home seemed like an ideal arrangement, but over time he found himself struggling to stay focused. His desk was covered with unrelated items. Important notes were mixed with old paperwork. His workspace served as an office, dining area, and storage space all at once. Throughout the day, he constantly lost focus, not because he lacked skill or ambition, but because his environment was filled with distractions. After deciding to reorganize his workspace, he removed unnecessary clutter, created dedicated areas for specific tasks, and ensured that everything he needed was easily accessible. The change was surprisingly powerful. His productivity improved, his stress decreased, and his workdays felt far more manageable. The environment had not solved every problem, but it had stopped creating new ones. This principle extends far beyond physical spaces. Your environment also includes the information you consume, the people you spend time with, and the habits that surround your daily life. If your attention is constantly pulled toward negativity, distractions, and unnecessary noise, maintaining focus becomes difficult. If you are surrounded by people who encourage growth, responsibility, and progress, staying disciplined becomes easier. The environments we create are not limited to walls and furniture. They include everything that regularly influences our thinking. An organized person understands that success is not only about making good decisions, it is also about making good decisions easier. Rather than depending on motivation every day, they prepare in advance. They create systems, routines, and surroundings that support their goals. They place important tools where they are visible. They reduce distractions before distractions become a problem. They organize their spaces so that action feels natural instead of difficult. There is also a deeper psychological benefit to creating order in your environment. A clean and organized space sends a message to the mind. It communicates clarity, purpose, and control. When you enter a well-organized room, your attention is less fragmented. Your thoughts feel calmer. Your energy can be directed toward meaningful work instead of managing unnecessary disorder. External order often creates internal calm. This does not mean your environment must be perfect, Perfection is neither realistic nor necessary. The goal is not to create a flawless space, but a supportive one. Small improvements can produce significant results. A clearer desk, a dedicated workspace, a better filing system, or fewer distractions may seem minor, but these changes accumulate over time. They reduce mental strain and make productive behavior more likely. As you continue building an organized mind, remember that every environment is shaping you in some way. The question is whether it is shaping you intentionally or accidentally. You have the ability to design surroundings that encourage focus, discipline, and growth. When your environment pulls you forward instead of holding you back, progress becomes less of a struggle and more of a natural outcome. The right environment cannot guarantee success, but it can make success far easier to achieve. Chapter 4. Tell every hour where to go. Time is one of the few resources that is distributed equally to everyone. Every person receives the same 24 hours in a day, yet the difference between a life of constant frustration and a life of steady progress often comes down to how those hours are used. Many people feel as though time is slipping away from them. They rush from task to task, move from one obligation to another, and end each day wondering where all their time went. The problem is rarely a lack of hours. More often, it is a lack of direction. An organized mind understands a simple truth. If you do not decide where your time will go, something else will decide for you. Distractions, interruptions, urgent requests, unexpected problems, and other people's priorities will quickly fill every available moment. Without a plan, the day becomes reactive. Instead of leading your time, you spend your energy chasing it. This creates a cycle that feels busy but often produces very little meaningful progress. One reason this happens is that the human mind tends to overestimate what it can remember and underestimate the importance of planning. Many people begin the day with a vague idea of what they hope to accomplish. They trust themselves to remember important tasks and assume they will naturally get around to everything that matters. Unfortunately, reality rarely works that way. New demands appear, distractions emerge, and attention gets pulled in multiple directions. By the end of the day, important priorities are often left unfinished, while less important activities consume far more time than expected. Planning is not about predicting every detail of the day. It is about creating direction. Think of it as giving your time a purpose before the world begins making demands on it. When you take a few moments to decide what deserves your attention, you dramatically increase the likelihood that those things will actually get done. Planning transforms good intentions into clear commitments. Many people resist planning because they believe it will make life feel rigid or restrictive. In reality, the opposite is often true. A good plan creates freedom. It removes uncertainty and reduces the mental effort required to decide what to do next. Instead of constantly asking yourself where to focus, you already know. Instead of wasting energy making decisions throughout the day, you can direct that energy toward action. Structure does not limit productivity, it supports it. Travis Monroe, an insurance advisor, experienced this firsthand. His days were always packed with appointments, phone calls, paperwork, and client requests. He worked long hours and remained constantly busy, yet he often felt as though he was falling behind. At the end of each week, he found himself frustrated by how many important tasks remained unfinished. The turning point came when he started planning each day before it began. Rather than simply reacting to whatever appeared, he identified his most important priorities in advance and scheduled dedicated time for them. Within a few months, he noticed a significant difference. He was not working more hours than before. He was simply directing those hours more intentionally. The same amount of time was producing far better results. One of the most valuable principles of effective planning is understanding the difference between urgent and important tasks. Urgent tasks demand immediate attention. They often feel pressing, loud, and impossible to ignore. Important tasks, however, are the ones that contribute most to long-term progress. They build careers, improve health, strengthen relationships, and move goals forward. The challenge is that important tasks are often not urgent. Because of this, they are easy to postpone. An organized person learns to protect time for what is important before urgency takes over the day. This requires being honest about priorities. Not everything deserves equal attention. One of the fastest ways to lose control of your schedule is to treat every task as equally important. When everything becomes a priority, nothing truly is. Organized individuals regularly ask themselves a simple question: what matters most right now? That question creates clarity. It helps separate essential activities from unnecessary ones and ensures that energy is directed toward meaningful progress. Another powerful habit is planning tomorrow before today ends. This simple practice creates a smooth transition between days. Instead of waking up and immediately deciding what to do, you begin with clarity. Your priorities are already identified. Your schedule already has direction. This reduces decision fatigue and allows you to start with purpose rather than confusion. Even a brief review each evening can have a remarkable impact on productivity and peace of mind. Of course, no plan survives perfectly. Unexpected events will occur. Priorities will shift. Emergencies will arise. The goal is not to create a flawless schedule, but a useful one. Planning is not about controlling every minute. It is about ensuring that your most important responsibilities do not get lost amid distractions and interruptions. Flexibility remains important, but flexibility works best when it is built upon a foundation of structure. As you continue developing an organized mind, remember that time management is ultimately attention management. You cannot create more hours in a day, but you can become more intentional about how those hours are spent. Every day is an opportunity to invest your time in ways that align with your values, goals, and priorities. When you tell every hour where to go, you stop wondering where your time went. Instead, you begin building days that reflect the life you truly want to create. Chapter 5. Replace motivation with reliable systems. Motivation is one of the most misunderstood forces in personal growth. People often speak about it as though it is the key to success. They search for motivational books, videos, speeches, and quotes, hoping to find the spark that will finally push them into action. For a short period, motivation can feel powerful. It creates excitement, energy, and a strong desire to improve. The problem is that motivation is temporary. It comes and goes. Some days it is abundant. Other days it seems completely absent. If your progress depends entirely on motivation, your results will rise and fall with your emotions. An organized mind learns an important lesson early. Success cannot be built on something that changes from day to day. Motivation is helpful when it appears, but it is too unreliable to serve as a foundation. Life is filled with moments when you will feel tired, distracted, discouraged, or overwhelmed. There will be mornings when enthusiasm is nowhere to be found. There will be days when challenges seem larger than your confidence. During those moments, motivation offers little help. What carries you forward is not inspiration, it is structure. This is where systems become valuable. A system is simply a repeatable process that guides your actions regardless of how you feel. Instead of relying on emotional energy, a system relies on consistency. It removes uncertainty by answering an important question before the day even begins. What should I do next? When a reliable system is in place, you no longer have to negotiate with yourself every morning. The decision has already been made. Think about brushing your teeth. You probably do not wake up each day feeling inspired to brush your teeth. You do not wait for motivation to appear before taking care of this responsibility. You do it because it is part of a system. The behavior has become automatic. It requires little mental effort because it is built into your routine. This same principle can be applied to nearly every area of life. The goal is not to make important actions exciting. The goal is to make them consistent. One reason systems are so effective is that they reduce decision fatigue. Every decision requires mental energy. When you spend your day constantly deciding when to work, when to exercise, when to plan, or when to focus, you gradually drain your attention and willpower. By creating routines and structures, you eliminate many of these decisions. You know what needs to happen because you have already established a process. This frees your mind to focus on execution instead of endless deliberation. Grant Holloway, a medical equipment sales representative, struggled with inconsistency for years. At the beginning of every month, he felt energized and determined. He created ambitious goals, planned major improvements, and promised himself that this time would be different. For a week or two, everything went well. Then distractions appeared. Motivation faded. Old habits returned. By the end of the month, many of his goals remained unfinished. After experiencing this cycle repeatedly, he realized that enthusiasm was not his problem. His problem was the absence of reliable systems. He began creating simple daily routines for prospecting, client follow-ups, planning, and professional development. The routines were not exciting, but they were consistent. Over time, those small systems produced more results than years of occasional motivation ever had. Many people underestimate the power of small, repeatable actions because they focus too much on dramatic changes. They want rapid transformation, immediate results, and major breakthroughs. Yet lasting success is usually built through ordinary actions repeated consistently. A single workout may not transform your health. A single planning session may not transform your productivity. A single focused workday may not transform your career. But when these actions become part of a system and are repeated over months and years, the results become extraordinary. Reliable systems also create stability during difficult seasons. Life is unpredictable. There will be setbacks, disappointments, and unexpected challenges. During those times, motivation often disappears first. A system, however, remains available. Even if you cannot perform at your best, you can still follow the process. You can still complete the next step. This ability to maintain progress during difficult periods is one of the defining characteristics of disciplined individuals. It is important to remember that systems do not need to be complicated. In fact, simpler systems are often more effective. The more complex a process becomes, the harder it is to maintain. A simple morning routine, a daily planning habit, a dedicated work block, or a weekly review can create tremendous results when practiced consistently. The goal is not perfection. The goal is repeatability. As you continue building an organized life, begin paying less attention to how motivated you feel and more attention to the systems guiding your actions. Ask yourself what behaviors are important enough to become automatic. Consider which decisions could be simplified through routines. Look for ways to make consistency easier and excuses less available. The people who achieve lasting success are not necessarily the most motivated. They are often the people who have created systems strong enough to carry them forward even when motivation disappears. Motivation can help you start, but systems help you continue. And in the long run, continuation matters far more than a powerful beginning. A well-organized life is not built on occasional bursts of inspiration. It is built on reliable actions repeated day after day until discipline becomes part of who you are. Chapter 6. Train yourself to finish what you start. Few habits are more powerful than the ability to finish what you start. It sounds simple, almost obvious, yet it is one of the defining characteristics of disciplined and organized people. Many individuals begin projects with enthusiasm, set goals with excitement, and make commitments with genuine intention. The beginning is rarely the problem. The challenge comes later, when the excitement fades, obstacles appear, and the work becomes repetitive. This is where many efforts are abandoned, ideas remain unfinished, goals remain incomplete, and potential remains unrealized. An organized mind understands that unfinished tasks carry a hidden cost. Every commitment you make creates a small mental obligation. When that obligation remains unresolved, it continues occupying space in your attention. The result is often a feeling of mental heaviness that is difficult to explain. You may not be actively working on a project, but part of your mind continues thinking about it. A book left half-read, a conversation postponed, a project delayed, or a goal abandoned all contribute to this burden. Over time, these unfinished commitments accumulate and create mental clutter that weakens focus and drains energy. One reason people struggle to finish is that they have become addicted to beginnings. Starting something new often feels exciting because it offers possibility. New goals come with optimism. New projects create anticipation. New plans allow us to imagine future success. Finishing, however, requires persistence. It demands patience when progress feels slow and discipline when motivation disappears. The rewards of completion are often delayed, which is why many people move from one new idea to another without fully committing to any of them. This pattern can be dangerous because it creates the illusion of progress. You may have dozens of plans, notebooks filled with ideas, and a long list of goals, yet very little changes in your life if those plans never reach completion. Success is not determined by how many things you start. It is determined by how many meaningful things you finish. An organized life is built on execution, not intention alone. Preston Blake, a small business owner, learned this lesson through experience. He was creative, ambitious, and constantly generating new ideas. Every few weeks, he discovered a new strategy he wanted to implement. He would begin redesigning systems, launching projects, or exploring opportunities with great enthusiasm. Yet before those efforts could mature, his attention would shift to something else. As a result, many of his projects remained unfinished. Despite working hard, he often felt frustrated by his lack of progress. Eventually, he made a simple commitment. Before starting something new, he would complete what was already in front of him. The change was not dramatic at first, but over time, it transformed his results. By focusing on completion rather than constant initiation, he began building momentum that carried into every area of his business. Completion creates something valuable that unfinished work never can: confidence. Every time you finish a task, you send a message to yourself. You prove that your commitments matter. You reinforce the belief that you can be trusted to follow through. This may seem like a small psychological shift, but it has enormous consequences. Self-confidence is not built through positive thinking alone. It is built through evidence. When you consistently keep promises to yourself, your trust in your own ability grows stronger. This is why even small completions matter. Finishing a simple task may seem insignificant, but it creates momentum. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in personal growth. Once you begin completing tasks consistently, your brain starts associating action with achievement. Progress becomes rewarding, discipline becomes easier. The habit of finishing begins to strengthen itself. Another important principle is learning to distinguish between quitting and adjusting. Not every goal should be pursued forever. Not every project deserves completion. Sometimes priorities change, new information emerges, or circumstances require a different approach. Organized individuals understand that strategic adjustments are part of growth. However, there is a significant difference between consciously choosing a new direction and abandoning something simply because it became difficult. One decision is intentional, the other is avoidance. The ability to finish also requires learning how to tolerate imperfection. Many unfinished projects remain incomplete because people are waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect result. Perfectionism often disguises itself as high standards, but in reality, it frequently prevents progress. Finished and imperfect will almost always create more value than perfect and unfinished. The goal is not flawless execution. The goal is meaningful completion. As you continue building an organized mind, begin paying closer attention to what remains unfinished in your life. Consider the commitments, projects, and responsibilities that continue demanding mental energy. Some may need to be completed. Others may need to be intentionally released. Either way, clarity is essential. The longer unfinished obligations remain unresolved, the more attention they consume. A disciplined life is not built by chasing endless beginnings. It is built by consistently bringing important things to completion. Every finished task strengthens focus. Every completed commitment reduces mental clutter. Every act of follow-through builds trust in yourself. Over time, this habit becomes part of your identity. You stop being someone who starts with enthusiasm and stops when things become difficult. You become someone who finishes. And that single change can transform not only your productivity, but your entire approach to life. Chapter 7. Guard your attention like a valuable asset. Attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess, yet it is often treated as though it has little worth. People protect their money, safeguard their possessions, and carefully manage their schedules, but many allow their attention to be pulled in countless directions without much thought. Every day, notifications, messages, advertisements, conversations, and endless streams of information compete for a limited supply of focus. The result is a mind that feels busy but rarely feels fully engaged. In a world filled with distractions, the ability to protect your attention has become one of the greatest advantages you can develop. An organized mind understands that attention is closely connected to achievement. Whatever consistently receives your attention will eventually influence your results. If your focus is scattered across dozens of unimportant things, your progress will be scattered as well. If your attention is directed toward meaningful priorities, your efforts become more effective. Success is rarely the result of doing everything. More often, it is the result of giving your best attention to what matters most. Many people believe they are multitasking, when in reality, they are rapidly switching their attention from one thing to another. The brain is not designed to focus deeply on multiple demanding tasks at the same time. Each switch requires mental energy. Each interruption forces the mind to reset. Over time, this constant shifting creates fatigue and reduces the quality of your work. Even when tasks are eventually completed, they often take longer and produce less satisfying results. The cost of distraction is not always obvious. It rarely announces itself in dramatic ways. Instead, it appears quietly through lost opportunities, unfinished projects, forgotten details, and reduced productivity. A few minutes spent checking a notification may not seem important. A brief interruption may appear harmless. However, when these moments occur repeatedly throughout the day, they fragment your attention and make sustained concentration increasingly difficult. What seems small in the moment becomes significant over time. Spencer Rhodes, a marketing strategist, experienced this challenge firsthand. His work required creativity, analysis, and strategic thinking, yet he often felt as though he was constantly falling behind. His days were filled with emails, messages, meetings, and social media updates. Every notification seemed important. Every interruption demanded immediate attention. Although he worked long hours, he rarely felt satisfied with what he accomplished. Eventually, he decided to experiment with protecting his attention more intentionally. He began scheduling dedicated periods of uninterrupted work, silencing unnecessary notifications and limiting distractions during important projects. The results surprised him. He completed tasks more quickly, produced better work, and felt less mentally exhausted. Nothing about his talent had changed. What changed was his ability to focus. One of the most important lessons about attention is that it naturally flows toward whatever is easiest, most entertaining, or most urgent. Unfortunately, the things that contribute most to long-term success are often none of those. Meaningful work frequently requires effort. Personal growth requires patience. Building skills requires repetition. Because these activities are not always immediately rewarding, they can easily lose the competition for attention. This is why protecting focus requires conscious effort. Left unmanaged, attention will often drift toward whatever offers the fastest gratification. An organized person learns to become selective about where attention is invested. This does not mean ignoring responsibilities or disconnecting from the world. It means recognizing that attention is limited and should be treated accordingly. Every time you say yes to one thing, you are indirectly saying no to something else. Every minute spent on distractions is a minute unavailable for meaningful progress. Understanding this trade-off creates greater awareness and helps guide better decisions. One practical way to strengthen focus is to create periods of uninterrupted concentration. During these periods, a single task receives your full attention. No switching, no multitasking, and no unnecessary distractions. At first, this may feel uncomfortable. Modern life has conditioned many people to expect constant stimulation. However, with practice, the ability to concentrate deeply becomes stronger. What once felt difficult gradually becomes natural. Another valuable habit is learning to pause before responding to every demand for your attention. Not everything requires an immediate response. Not every notification deserves your focus. Not every request needs to interrupt your priorities. Organized minds develop the ability to distinguish between what is urgent and what is merely distracting. This simple distinction protects valuable mental energy and helps maintain momentum throughout the day. Attention is also influenced by clarity. When you know exactly what matters most, it becomes easier to stay focused. Confusion invites distraction because the mind seeks easier alternatives when priorities are unclear. This is why planning, goal setting, and organization work together. The clearer your priorities become, the easier it is to direct your attention toward them. As you continue building an organized life, remember that your attention shapes your reality. What you focus on expands in significance. What you repeatedly attend to becomes part of your daily experience. If you constantly give your attention away to distractions, your life will reflect those distractions. If you deliberately invest your attention in meaningful work, important relationships, and worthwhile goals, your life will gradually reflect those choices instead. Guarding your attention is not about becoming more productive for the sake of productivity. It is about protecting the resource that determines how you spend your time, energy, and life. The world will always compete for your focus. The question is whether you will allow others to decide where your attention goes, or whether you will choose that direction for yourself. An organized mind makes that choice intentionally every single day. Chapter 8. Eliminate the small habits, creating big problems. Life is rarely shaped by a single decision. More often, it is shaped by hundreds of small choices repeated day after day. These choices may seem insignificant in the moment. A task delayed until tomorrow. A promise made but not kept. A few extra minutes wasted here and there. A responsibility ignored because it feels inconvenient. Individually, these actions appear harmless, yet when repeated consistently, they begin to create patterns. Over time, those patterns become habits, and those habits quietly shape the direction of your life. One of the greatest challenges in building an organized mind is recognizing the influence of small habits. People often notice major problems only after they have grown large enough to demand attention. They see the cluttered workspace, the missed opportunities, the unfinished goals, or the overwhelming schedule. What they do not always see are the tiny behaviors that created those outcomes. Every large problem usually begins as a small action repeated often enough to become normal. This is why organization is not simply about creating better systems, it is also about identifying the habits that constantly undermine those systems. You can have the best planner, the best schedule, and the best intentions, but if your daily behaviors are creating disorder faster than you can organize it, progress will always feel difficult. Lasting change requires more than adding good habits. It also requires removing the bad ones. One common habit that creates chaos is postponement. Many people tell themselves they will handle something later. They will clean the workspace tomorrow. They will organize the files next week. They will return the phone call when they have more time. They will address the problem eventually. At first, the delay seems harmless. The task only takes a few minutes, and there appears to be no urgency. However, tomorrow becomes next week becomes next month, and eventually a simple responsibility grows into a much larger burden. The task itself often remains easy. What becomes difficult is carrying the mental weight of continually avoiding it. Another destructive habit is leaving small things unfinished. An organized life is built through completion. Every unfinished task creates another loose end that competes for attention. When enough loose ends accumulate, life begins to feel scattered. This is why disciplined individuals often follow a simple rule. If something can be completed quickly and responsibly, do it now rather than postponing it unnecessarily. Small acts of completion prevent larger problems from developing later. Cole Bennett, a warehouse supervisor, experienced the effects of these habits firsthand. He was hard-working and dependable, but he had developed a tendency to delay small responsibilities. Reports were postponed until the last minute. Minor maintenance issues were left unresolved. Organizational tasks were constantly pushed aside because more urgent matters seemed to demand attention. None of these delays appeared significant on their own, yet, over time, the accumulated effect became impossible to ignore. Small problems turned into major disruptions. Stress increased, productivity suffered. Eventually, he realized that the issue was not the large problems he faced. The issue was the collection of small habits that had quietly created them. By addressing tasks earlier and becoming more proactive, he gradually restored order to both his work and his mindset. One reason small habits are so powerful is that they often operate below the level of conscious awareness. They become automatic. You stop noticing them because they feel normal. This is why self-awareness is such an important part of personal growth. Before a habit can be changed, it must first be recognized. Many people spend years trying to improve their lives without ever identifying the behaviors that are holding them back. They focus on outcomes while ignoring the patterns that produce those outcomes. An organized mind regularly examines its habits. It asks difficult questions. What behaviors are creating unnecessary stress? What routines are wasting valuable time? What actions repeatedly lead to frustration, confusion, or disorder? These questions create awareness, and awareness creates the possibility of change. You cannot eliminate a problem you refuse to acknowledge. It is also important to understand that replacing a habit is often easier than simply eliminating it. Nature dislikes empty spaces, and so does human behavior. When you remove a bad habit, it helps to replace it with a better one. If you eliminate procrastination, replace it with immediate action on small tasks. If you reduce distractions, replace them with focused work sessions. If you stop neglecting planning, replace that neglect with a daily review habit. Positive behaviors gain strength when they have a clear place in your routine. The encouraging truth is that small habits work in both directions. Just as negative habits create disorder over time, positive habits create order. A few minutes spent planning each day can save hours of confusion later. A small effort to stay organized can prevent future stress. A simple commitment to finishing what you start can transform your confidence and productivity. The same principle that creates problems can also create progress. As you continue building an organized life, pay close attention to the small behaviors that fill your days. Do not underestimate their influence simply because they seem minor. Success and failure are often built from the same source: repeated actions. Every habit is casting a vote for the kind of life you are creating. The question is whether those habits are leading you toward greater order or greater chaos. The good news is that change does not require a dramatic transformation overnight. It begins with awareness. It begins with one better choice, one completed task, one improved routine, and one small habit replaced with a stronger one. Over time, those small changes accumulate, and the life that once felt disorganized begins to move steadily toward clarity, discipline, and lasting success. Chapter 9. Create daily rituals that keep you grounded. A well-organized life is not built once and then maintained forever. It is built daily. Every morning offers a new beginning, and every evening provides an opportunity to reflect, adjust, and prepare. This is why highly disciplined people often rely on rituals rather than random effort. They understand that the quality of their days determines the quality of their lives, and rituals help create consistency when motivation, energy, or circumstances fluctuate. The word ritual may sound formal, but in reality, it simply refers to a meaningful routine performed with intention. Unlike habits that often occur automatically, rituals are practiced with awareness. They create structure, stability, and direction. They act as anchors that keep you grounded, especially when life becomes busy or unpredictable. In a world filled with distractions and constant demands, these anchors become increasingly valuable. One reason daily rituals are so effective is that they reduce uncertainty. Many people begin their mornings in a reactive state. Before their feet even touch the floor, they are checking messages, reading notifications, and responding to other people's priorities. The day begins with distraction instead of direction. As a result, they spend much of their time reacting rather than leading. An intentional morning ritual helps reverse this pattern. It allows you to begin the day with purpose instead of pressure. A powerful morning ritual does not need to be complicated. In fact, simplicity is often the key to consistency. The purpose is not to create a perfect routine that takes hours to complete. The purpose is to create a reliable process that prepares your mind for the day ahead. This may include reviewing priorities, organizing your thoughts, planning important tasks, exercising, reading, or spending a few quiet moments reflecting. What matters most is that the ritual creates clarity before the demands of the day begin competing for your attention. Morning rituals are valuable because they influence momentum. The way you begin your day often affects how the rest of it unfolds. Starting with intention creates a sense of control. Starting with distraction creates a sense of reaction. While no ritual can eliminate every challenge, it can provide a strong foundation from which to face those challenges more effectively. Equally important, though often overlooked, are evening rituals. While mornings receive much of the attention in discussions about productivity and discipline, evenings play a critical role in maintaining organization. The way you end your day influences how you begin the next one. An organized evening creates an organized morning. A chaotic evening often creates a chaotic start. Mitchell Grayson, a financial analyst, discovered this connection after years of struggling with inconsistency. His mornings often felt rushed and stressful. He constantly felt behind before the day had even begun. Initially, he focused all his efforts on improving his morning routine, but the results were limited. Eventually, he realized that the problem was starting the night before. He frequently stayed up too late, left important tasks unorganized, and went to bed without any plan for the following day. Once he introduced a simple evening ritual that included reviewing his schedule, organizing his workspace, and identifying his top priorities for tomorrow, his mornings became dramatically calmer. The improvement was not caused by working harder. It was caused by preparing more effectively. Evening rituals offer an opportunity to close mental loops. Throughout the day, your mind accumulates information, responsibilities, and unfinished thoughts. Without a process for reviewing and organizing these items, they often follow you into the evening, making it difficult to relax or rest. A simple review can help clear mental clutter. It allows you to acknowledge what was accomplished, identify what still needs attention, and create a plan for moving forward. This process creates a sense of closure that supports both productivity and peace of mind. Daily rituals also strengthen discipline because they reduce dependence on willpower. When important actions become part of a regular routine, they require less mental effort. You no longer need to debate whether or not to do them. They simply become part of how you live. This consistency is one of the greatest advantages of rituals. They transform positive behaviors from occasional events into dependable practices. It is important to remember that rituals should serve your life, not control it. The goal is not rigid perfection. Life will always include unexpected situations, changing schedules, and occasional disruptions. A missed ritual is not a failure. What matters is returning to the routine rather than abandoning it entirely. Flexibility and consistency can coexist. The most effective rituals are those that can adapt while still providing structure. As you continue building an organized mind, consider the routines that currently shape your days. Some may be helping you move forward, others may be pulling you backward without your awareness. Every repeated action contributes to your overall direction. By intentionally creating morning and evening rituals, you establish reliable points of stability in a constantly changing world. Organization is not something you achieve once. It is something you practice repeatedly. Daily rituals make that practice easier. They provide rhythm, reduce decision fatigue, and create a sense of order that carries into every area of life. When your days begin and end with intention, the space in between becomes far easier to manage. Over time, these simple rituals become more than routines. They become the foundation of a disciplined, organized, and purposeful life. Chapter 10. Simplify before you complicate. One of the greatest obstacles to an organized life is unnecessary complexity. Many people assume that better results require more tools, more strategies, more commitments, and more information. When they feel overwhelmed, they often respond by adding something else to their lives. They download another productivity app, create a more detailed plan, take on another responsibility, or search for a more advanced solution. Yet in many cases, the answer is not to add more. The answer is to remove what is unnecessary. An organized mind understands that complexity creates friction. The more complicated your systems become, the harder they are to maintain. The more obligations you accept, the more divided your attention becomes. The more decisions you face each day, the more mental energy you consume. Complexity often disguises itself as progress, but it frequently produces confusion instead. Simplicity, on the other hand, creates clarity. It helps you focus on what matters and eliminate what does not. Think about how much mental energy is spent managing unnecessary choices. What should I work on first? Which project deserves attention? Which task is most important? What should I prioritize today? When your life lacks simplicity, these questions appear constantly. Each decision requires effort. Each option competes for attention. Over time, this creates decision fatigue, a state in which the mind becomes exhausted from making too many choices. As decision fatigue increases, the quality of your decisions often decreases. This is why organized people actively reduce unnecessary complexity. They understand that every commitment carries a cost. Every responsibility requires attention. Every new project demands time and energy. Before adding something to their lives, they consider what it may require them to remove. They recognize that saying yes to one thing often means saying no to something else. This awareness helps them remain intentional about where their energy is invested. One of the most effective ways to simplify life is to identify what truly matters. Many people spend considerable time on activities that produce little value simply because they have never stopped to evaluate them. They continue attending meetings that are unnecessary, maintaining commitments that no longer serve a purpose, or pursuing goals that are no longer meaningful. Simplicity begins with asking honest questions. What is essential? What creates the greatest impact? What can be removed without causing harm? These questions help reveal where unnecessary complexity has quietly accumulated. Dalton Reeves, a real estate consultant, found himself trapped in this cycle. He was constantly busy and rarely had a free moment. His calendar was packed with appointments, networking events, administrative tasks, and various side projects. Despite working long hours, he often felt scattered and overwhelmed. The turning point came when he carefully reviewed how he was spending his time. He discovered that many of his commitments were producing very little value. They consumed energy without contributing significantly to his goals. Gradually, he began simplifying. He reduced unnecessary obligations, streamlined his workflow, and focused more intensely on a smaller number of high-impact activities. To his surprise, his productivity improved while his stress decreased. He achieved more by doing less. Simplicity is also important when it comes to personal organization systems. Many people abandon planning methods because they make them too complicated. They create elaborate systems that require constant maintenance and eventually become burdens themselves. The best organizational systems are often the simplest ones. A system that is easy to use consistently will outperform a sophisticated system that is rarely maintained. Simplicity increases sustainability. Another area where simplification creates tremendous benefits is decision-making. Highly organized individuals often create personal rules that reduce the number of choices they must make. These rules may relate to scheduling, priorities, finances, health, or daily routines. By establishing clear guidelines in advance, they eliminate the need to repeatedly make the same decisions. This conserves mental energy and creates greater consistency. Instead of debating every choice, they rely on principles that guide their actions. Simplicity also creates space. When life becomes crowded with unnecessary commitments and distractions, there is little room left for reflection, creativity, or meaningful work. The mind remains occupied with managing complexity rather than focusing on progress. By removing what is unnecessary, you create room for what is important. This space is valuable because it allows you to think more clearly and act more intentionally. It is worth remembering that simplicity is not about living with less for the sake of having less. It is about creating room for what matters most. It is about reducing the noise so that important priorities become easier to see. A simplified life does not lack purpose. In fact, it often contains more purpose because attention is no longer divided among countless distractions. As you continue building an organized mind, look carefully at the complexity within your life. Examine your commitments, systems, routines, and responsibilities. Ask yourself whether each one is serving a meaningful purpose. Be willing to remove what no longer contributes to your growth. Do not assume that every problem requires a more complicated solution. Often, the opposite is true. An organized life is not built by adding endlessly. It is built by choosing wisely. The clearer your priorities become, the easier it becomes to simplify. The easier it becomes to simplify, the more focused your attention becomes. And when your attention is focused on what truly matters, progress becomes not only possible, but inevitable. Simplicity is not the absence of ambition, it is the discipline to remove everything that distracts you from it. Chapter 11. Turn goals into scheduled actions. Goals are powerful because they give direction to effort. They provide a destination, a target, and a reason to keep moving forward. Without goals, it is easy to drift through life reacting to circumstances and allowing daily demands to dictate your path. However, while goals are important, they are often misunderstood. Many people believe that setting a goal is enough to create change. They write down what they want, feel inspired for a few days, and then wait for progress to happen. Unfortunately, goals alone rarely produce results. What creates results is action, and action only becomes consistent when it is planned. An organized mind understands the difference between wishing and scheduling. A wish says, "I want to achieve this someday." A scheduled action says, "I will work on this at a specific time." The difference may seem small, but it changes everything. Goals that remain vague often remain unfinished. Goals connected to specific actions become far more likely to succeed. The moment a goal enters your calendar, your planner, or your daily routine, it begins moving from possibility toward reality. One reason goals frequently fail is that people focus too much on the outcome and too little on the process. They become excited about the destination but neglect the path required to reach it. They imagine the promotion, the healthier body, the successful business, or the organized life, but they do not clearly define the actions needed to get there. As a result, the goal remains distant and abstract. It feels inspiring, but it does not create daily movement. The truth is that every significant achievement is built through small actions repeated consistently over time. A goal may provide motivation, but the process creates progress. This is why organized individuals spend less time obsessing over outcomes and more time building systems that support those outcomes. They ask themselves not only what they want to achieve, but also what they need to do today. Their focus remains grounded in action. Austin Mercer, a physical therapist, experienced this challenge firsthand. He had ambitious goals for both his professional and personal life. He wanted to expand his practice, improve his fitness, and develop new skills. Yet, despite his enthusiasm, months passed with little measurable progress. His goals remained important to him, but they were rarely translated into specific actions. Everything changed when he began breaking his goals into smaller, scheduled steps. Instead of vaguely planning to improve his business, he blocked time each week for strategic planning. Instead of hoping to exercise more consistently, he scheduled workouts as non-negotiable appointments. Gradually, the gap between intention and action began to close. His goals had not changed. What changed was his approach to execution. A useful way to think about goals is to imagine them as projects rather than wishes. Every project consists of tasks, milestones, and deadlines. It requires planning and follow-through. When you treat goals like projects, they become more manageable because they can be broken into smaller pieces. A large objective that once felt overwhelming begins to feel achievable because you know exactly what needs to happen next. Clarity replaces uncertainty, and action becomes easier. This approach also reduces procrastination. People often delay work on important goals because the goals feel too large or too complicated. The mind struggles to act on something that lacks a clear starting point. By breaking a goal into smaller actions, you remove much of that resistance. Instead of asking yourself how to achieve a major objective, you simply focus on the next step. Progress becomes less intimidating because it is no longer measured in giant leaps, but in consistent movement. Another important principle is tracking progress. Organized individuals do not rely solely on feelings to determine whether they are moving forward. They create ways to measure their actions and results. This does not require complicated systems. Sometimes it is as simple as reviewing completed tasks, monitoring habits, or evaluating weekly progress. Tracking creates awareness, and awareness helps maintain momentum. It also provides encouragement during periods when progress feels slow, because it allows you to see how far you have already come. It is equally important to understand that goals should support your priorities, not compete with them. Many people overwhelm themselves by pursuing too many objectives at once. They divide their attention among numerous ambitions and then wonder why progress feels limited. An organized mind recognizes the value of focus. Rather than trying to achieve everything simultaneously, it identifies what matters most and directs energy accordingly. Fewer goals pursued consistently often produce far greater results than many goals pursued inconsistently. The power of scheduled action lies in its ability to transform dreams into behavior. Every meaningful accomplishment begins as an idea, but ideas alone accomplish nothing. They require execution. They require time, effort, and commitment. Most importantly, they require a place in your daily life. If a goal never reaches your schedule, it may never reach reality. As you continue building an organized life, take a closer look at the goals you have set for yourself. Ask whether they exist only as intentions or whether they have been connected to specific actions. Consider what can be scheduled, what can be measured, and what can be started immediately. Remember that success rarely comes from wishing harder. It comes from acting more consistently. Goals provide direction, but actions create movement. Every time you schedule a meaningful step, you strengthen the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Over time, those steps accumulate. What once seemed distant begins to feel achievable, and eventually, the goals that existed only in your imagination become part of your reality because you transformed them into something far more powerful, deliberate action. Chapter 12. Stay organized when life gets messy. It is relatively easy to stay organized when life is calm. When schedules are predictable, energy is high, and responsibilities are manageable, good habits tend to feel natural. Plans are followed, routines remain intact, and progress seems steady. The real test of organization, however, does not occur during easy seasons. It occurs when life becomes complicated. It occurs when unexpected problems appear, when stress increases, when plans change, and when circumstances refuse to cooperate. Anyone can be organized when conditions are ideal. The challenge is remaining organized when conditions are not. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that setbacks mean they have failed. A missed workout, an interrupted routine, a difficult week, or an unexpected challenge often leads to frustration. Instead of adjusting, they abandon their systems entirely. They miss a few days and conclude that all progress has been lost. They encounter obstacles and assume they are no longer capable of maintaining discipline. In reality, setbacks are not evidence of failure. They are evidence that life is happening. An organized mind understands that disruption is inevitable. No matter how carefully you plan, unexpected events will occur. Illness, family responsibilities, work pressures, financial challenges, and countless other circumstances can suddenly change your priorities. The goal is not to create a life free from disruption. The goal is to build systems that can survive disruption. Resilience matters far more than perfection. Many people view organization as a rigid structure that must be followed exactly. This misunderstanding often creates unnecessary stress. True organization is not rigid, it is adaptable, it provides direction without becoming a prison. It creates order while allowing room for change. The most effective systems are flexible enough to accommodate life's unpredictability without collapsing under pressure. Tanner Whitlock, a construction project coordinator, learned this lesson during one of the most demanding periods of his career. Multiple projects required his attention simultaneously, deadlines were shifting constantly, and personal responsibilities were increasing at home. The routines that had worked well during calmer times suddenly felt difficult to maintain. At first, he became frustrated with himself. He felt as though he was losing control. However, after reflecting on the situation, he realized that his problem was not a lack of discipline. His problem was expecting himself to operate exactly as he had during less stressful circumstances. Instead of abandoning his systems, he simplified them. He focused on maintaining a few essential habits, while allowing less important routines to become more flexible. This adjustment helped him remain organized without creating additional pressure during an already difficult season. One of the most valuable skills you can develop is the ability to identify your non-negotiables. These are the habits and practices that remain important even when life becomes chaotic. They may be simple actions such as reviewing your priorities, maintaining a basic planning routine, protecting your sleep, or spending a few minutes organizing your schedule. During challenging times, you may not be able to do everything. However, preserving a few core habits can prevent complete disorganization. This principle is important because progress is easier to maintain than to rebuild. When people abandon all of their positive habits during difficult periods, they often create a much larger recovery process later. The goal is not maximum performance under every circumstance. The goal is continuity. Even small actions help maintain momentum. A reduced version of a good habit is often far better than abandoning it entirely. Another important aspect of resilience is learning to recover quickly. Everyone experiences setbacks. Everyone has days when plans fall apart or priorities shift unexpectedly. The difference between organized and disorganized individuals often lies in how quickly they return to productive behaviors. Some people allow a temporary setback to become a permanent pattern. Others view it as a brief interruption and resume their routines as soon as possible. The faster you recover, the less impact the disruption has on your long-term progress. An organized mind also avoids unnecessary self-criticism during difficult times. Many people respond to challenges by becoming their own harshest critics. They focus on what they failed to do rather than what they can do next. This mindset rarely improves performance. More often, it increases stress and reduces motivation. Effective organization requires honesty, but it also requires perspective. You can acknowledge mistakes without allowing them to define you. Flexibility becomes especially valuable during periods of uncertainty. When circumstances change, rigid plans often become ineffective. Organized individuals understand the importance of adjusting strategies while remaining committed to their overall goals. They separate methods from objectives. The path may need to change, but the destination can remain the same. This adaptability allows them to continue moving forward even when obstacles appear. As you continue building an organized life, remember that difficult seasons are not exceptions to the journey. They are part of the journey. Challenges will come, plans will occasionally fail, unexpected events will disrupt even the best intentions. What matters is not avoiding these experiences, but learning how to navigate them effectively. The true measure of organization is not how well you perform when everything goes according to plan. It is how well you respond when it does not. Resilient people understand that progress is never perfectly linear. They know that consistency is not about being flawless. It is about returning, adjusting, and continuing. When life becomes messy, an organized mind does not panic. It adapts, refocuses, and keeps moving forward. And that ability to remain steady during difficult times is one of the greatest forms of discipline you can develop. Chapter 13. Protect your energy to protect your progress. Time is important, but energy is what determines how effectively that time is used. Two people can have the same number of hours available, yet achieve dramatically different results, because one has the energy to think clearly, focus deeply, and act consistently, while the other struggles through the day feeling exhausted and distracted. This is why an organized life is not built solely on managing time. It is also built on managing energy. Without sufficient energy, even the best plans become difficult to execute. Many people approach productivity as though effort alone is enough. They push harder, work longer, and attempt to squeeze more activity into already crowded schedules. For a while, this approach may seem effective. However, energy is not an unlimited resource. Mental focus, emotional resilience, and physical stamina all require renewal. When these resources are continuously depleted without recovery, performance begins to decline. Tasks take longer. Decisions become more difficult. Motivation fades. Eventually, progress slows, despite increasing effort. An organized mind recognizes that sustainable success requires balance. This does not mean avoiding hard work or seeking constant comfort. It means understanding that energy must be protected if progress is to continue. Just as a vehicle requires fuel to travel long distances, your mind and body require renewal to perform at their best. Ignoring this reality may produce short-term results, but it often creates long-term problems. One of the first steps in managing energy is understanding where it is being lost. Many people assume that physical activity is the primary source of fatigue, but mental and emotional demands can be equally draining. Constant decision-making, unresolved stress, endless distractions, and persistent worry all consume energy. A cluttered schedule and an overloaded mind often create exhaustion long before physical fatigue appears. This is why organization plays such an important role in maintaining energy. Clear priorities, structured routines, and reduced mental clutter free up resources that would otherwise be wasted. Another common source of energy loss is attempting to give equal attention to everything. Some people approach each day as though every task deserves maximum effort. They try to solve every problem, respond to every request, and meet every expectation. While this may seem admirable, it is rarely sustainable. Energy becomes fragmented, and important priorities often suffer as a result. Organized individuals understand that not every responsibility deserves the same level of attention. They learn to focus their best energy where it will create the greatest impact. Chase Donovan, a regional sales director, experienced this challenge during a period of rapid professional growth. As his responsibilities increased, he responded by working longer hours and taking on more commitments. Initially, his results improved. However, over time, the pressure began to take its toll. He felt constantly tired, struggled to concentrate, and found himself becoming less effective despite investing more effort. Eventually, he realized that his problem was not a lack of discipline, it was a lack of recovery. He began creating boundaries around his schedule, protecting time for rest, reducing unnecessary commitments, and paying greater attention to his physical and mental well-being. The changes were surprisingly effective. By managing his energy more intentionally, he improved both his performance and his quality of life. One of the most valuable habits you can develop is learning to work with your energy rather than against it. Every person experiences natural fluctuations in focus and productivity throughout the day. There are periods when concentration feels effortless and periods when mental clarity is lower. Organized individuals pay attention to these patterns. They schedule important work during high-energy periods and reserve less demanding tasks for times when their focus naturally decreases. This simple adjustment often produces significant improvements in productivity. Protecting energy also requires learning the value of rest. In a culture that often celebrates constant activity, rest is sometimes viewed as weakness or laziness. In reality, rest is an essential component of sustained performance. Recovery allows the mind to process information, restore focus, and prepare for future challenges. Without adequate rest, even the most disciplined person will eventually experience diminishing returns. Rest is not the opposite of productivity. It is part of productivity. Emotional energy deserves equal attention. Unresolved conflicts, negative thinking patterns, and chronic stress can quietly drain your capacity to perform. This is why organized minds make room for reflection. They address problems rather than avoiding them. They seek solutions instead of dwelling endlessly on frustrations. By reducing unnecessary emotional burdens, they preserve energy for what truly matters. Another important aspect of energy management is recognizing that saying yes to everything often means saying no to your own well-being. Every commitment carries a cost. Every obligation requires attention. The more responsibilities you accept, the more carefully you must manage your resources. Organized people understand that boundaries are not selfish. They are necessary. Protecting your energy allows you to show up fully for the commitments that matter most. As you continue building an organized life, begin viewing energy as one of your most valuable assets. Pay attention to what strengthens it and what weakens it. Notice which activities leave you focused and productive and which leave you drained. Create routines that support renewal rather than constant depletion. Remember that success is not simply about how much you can do. It is about how consistently you can continue doing what matters. Long-term progress requires more than ambition. It requires sustainability. The goal is not to push yourself until you have nothing left to give. The goal is to build a life that allows you to keep moving forward year after year. When you protect your energy, you protect your ability to think clearly, act intentionally, and remain disciplined even when challenges arise. And when your energy is managed wisely, your progress becomes not only possible, but sustainable for the long journey ahead. Chapter 14. Raise your standards and enforce them daily. Every organized life is built upon a set of standards. Whether you realize it or not, the results you experience today are closely connected to the standards you have accepted for yourself. Your standards determine how you manage your time, how you respond to challenges, how you treat your responsibilities, and how consistently you follow through on your commitments. They influence your habits, shape your decisions, and ultimately define the quality of your life. If you want to create lasting change, you must eventually look beyond goals and focus on something deeper, the standards you are willing to uphold. Many people spend years chasing better results while continuing to operate according to the same old standards. They want greater success, better health, stronger discipline, or more organization, yet they tolerate behaviors that work against those outcomes. They allow distractions to dominate their attention. They postpone important tasks. They settle for inconsistency. Then they wonder why progress remains limited. The truth is simple. Your life will rarely rise above the standards you consistently accept. This is why lasting improvement is not only about learning new strategies. It is about deciding what behaviors are no longer acceptable. When your standards rise, your actions begin to change. You stop negotiating with habits that hold you back. You stop making excuses for behaviors that create disorder. You become more intentional because you recognize that every choice either reinforces or weakens the standards you are trying to establish. An organized mind understands that standards create clarity. They act as personal rules that guide decisions even when emotions fluctuate. Consider how much easier life becomes when certain choices are no longer open for debate. If you have established a standard that you plan your day before it begins, there is no daily argument about whether you should do it. If you have established a standard that you complete important responsibilities before turning to distractions, the decision has already been made. Standards remove uncertainty because they provide a framework for behavior. One reason people struggle with consistency is that they rely too heavily on feelings. When they feel motivated, they perform well. When motivation fades, their standards fade with it. This creates an unstable cycle in which progress depends on emotional conditions. Organized individuals learn to separate standards from feelings. They understand that discipline means doing what needs to be done, regardless of whether enthusiasm is present. Feelings may influence behavior, but they do not control it. Bryce Callahan, a corporate trainer, discovered this principle during a period when he felt stuck professionally. He had clear goals and strong ambitions, yet his daily actions often failed to reflect them. He frequently postponed important projects, allowed distractions to interrupt his work, and relied on motivation to determine his level of effort. Eventually, he realized that his problem was not a lack of knowledge, it was a lack of standards. He had goals for excellence, but standards that tolerated inconsistency. Once he began establishing non-negotiable expectations for himself, such as daily planning, focused work periods, and timely completion of responsibilities, his performance improved dramatically. The change did not happen because he became more talented. It happened because he raised the standard of what he expected from himself. One of the most powerful aspects of personal standards is that they influence identity. Every repeated behavior sends a message about who you believe you are. When you consistently follow through on commitments, you begin to see yourself as dependable. When you maintain organization despite challenges, you begin to see yourself as disciplined. These self-perceptions matter because identity often drives behavior. People naturally act in ways that align with the person they believe themselves to be. This is why standards should focus not only on outcomes, but also on character. It is useful to ask yourself what kind of person you want to become. Do you want to be someone who follows through? Someone who values order? Someone who keeps promises? Someone who takes responsibility? Once those qualities become part of your desired identity, your standards can be designed to support them. The goal is not simply to achieve more. The goal is to become more. Raising your standards does not mean becoming harsh, unrealistic, or perfectionistic. Perfection is not the objective. Consistency is. High standards should challenge you, but they should also be sustainable. They should encourage growth rather than create constant frustration. The purpose is not to demand flawless performance. The purpose is to establish behaviors that move you steadily in the right direction. It is also important to understand that standards require enforcement. Many people set expectations for themselves but fail to uphold them consistently. A standard only has value when it influences behavior. This is where discipline becomes essential. Every day presents opportunities to either reinforce your standards or weaken them. Every choice matters. The small decisions you make repeatedly will either strengthen your identity or undermine it. As you continue building an organized life, take time to examine the standards that currently govern your behavior. Consider whether they are helping you become the person you want to be. Identify areas where you have accepted less than you are capable of achieving. Then begin raising the expectations you hold for yourself, not through dramatic declarations, but through consistent action. Success is not built through occasional moments of excellence. It is built through daily standards that guide ordinary behavior. The organized life you seek will not emerge from a single breakthrough or a burst of motivation. It will emerge from the standards you establish and enforce day after day. When your standards rise, your actions improve. When your actions improve, your results begin to change. And over time, those results become the reflection of a stronger, more disciplined, and more intentional version of yourself. Chapter 15. Become the architect of an organized life. Throughout this audiobook, we have explored many principles of organization, discipline, and personal responsibility. We have discussed mental clarity, intentional living, productive environments, effective planning, reliable systems, focused attention, strong habits, meaningful rituals, resilience, energy management, and personal standards. Each of these ideas is valuable on its own, yet their true power emerges when they are combined into a single approach to life. Organization is not a collection of isolated techniques. It is a way of thinking, a way of acting, and ultimately a way of becoming. Many people spend years searching for the perfect strategy that will suddenly transform everything. They believe there must be a secret formula, a hidden shortcut, or a breakthrough moment that changes their life overnight. However, lasting success rarely arrives through dramatic events. More often, it is built through small decisions repeated consistently over time. The organized life is not created in a single day. It is constructed gradually, one choice at a time. Like an architect designing a building, you create your future through the plans you make and the actions you take every day. This idea is empowering because it places the responsibility for your life back into your own hands. Circumstances matter, challenges matter, unexpected events matter, yet none of these factors fully determine your future. What ultimately shapes your life is how you respond. Every day presents opportunities to create order or allow chaos. Every decision either strengthens your foundation or weakens it. When you recognize this, you stop seeing yourself as someone who is simply reacting to life. You begin seeing yourself as someone who is actively building it. An architect does not begin construction without a blueprint. Before the first brick is laid, there is a vision of what the finished structure will become. In the same way, an organized life requires a personal blueprint. It requires clarity about the values, priorities, and goals that matter most to you. Without this clarity, it is easy to become distracted by other people's expectations, temporary opportunities, or competing demands. The organized mind remains grounded because it knows what it is trying to build. Creating your blueprint begins with asking important questions. What kind of person do you want to become? What principles will guide your decisions? What habits support the future you want to create? What standards are you committed to maintaining? These questions move beyond productivity and into identity. They encourage you to think not only about what you want to achieve, but also about who you want to be. This distinction matters because achievements come and go. Goals are reached and replaced. Circumstances change. However, character remains. The habits you develop, the discipline you strengthen, and the values you live by continue influencing every area of life. When organization becomes part of your identity rather than merely a strategy, it becomes far more sustainable. You no longer organize because you are trying to reach a goal. You organize because it reflects the person you have chosen to become. Another important lesson is that organization is not about controlling every detail of life. Many people mistakenly associate organization with rigidity. They imagine perfectly structured schedules, flawless routines, and complete control over every circumstance. Real life does not work that way. Unexpected challenges will always arise. Plans will occasionally need to change. New opportunities will appear. The goal is not to control everything. The goal is to create enough structure that you can adapt effectively when life changes. Think of organization as creating a strong foundation rather than a strict set of rules. A strong foundation provides stability without eliminating flexibility. It allows you to adjust, grow, and respond to challenges without losing your sense of direction. This is why organized people are often more adaptable, not less. Their systems provide clarity, which makes change easier to navigate. It is also worth remembering that progress compounds. One organized day may not seem life-changing. One completed task may not appear significant. One disciplined decision may feel small. Yet these actions accumulate. Over weeks, months, and years, they create momentum. The habits you repeat today influence the opportunities available tomorrow. The standards you maintain now shape the results you experience later. Every positive choice contributes to a larger pattern. This understanding removes the pressure to achieve immediate perfection. You do not need to transform your life overnight. You do not need to master every principle instantly. What matters is your willingness to keep moving forward. Consistent progress is far more valuable than occasional perfection. The organized life is not built through flawless execution. It is built through steady commitment. As you move forward from this audiobook, remember that organization is not a destination you eventually reach. It is a lifelong practice. There will always be new challenges to navigate, new goals to pursue, and new opportunities to manage. The skills you have developed here are not temporary solutions. They are tools that can serve you for the rest of your life. You are the architect of your future. Every plan you create, every habit you strengthen, every standard you uphold, and every decision you make contributes to the structure you are building. The blueprint is yours. The responsibility is yours. The opportunity is yours. And with patience, discipline, and consistent action, you can create a life defined not by confusion and disorder, but by clarity, purpose, and lasting success. Conclusion. Organization is often misunderstood. Many people think it is about keeping a clean desk, maintaining a perfect schedule, or managing every detail of life with precision. While those things may play a role, they are not the true purpose of organization. The real purpose is far deeper. Organization is about creating clarity where there was confusion, direction where there was uncertainty, and purpose where there was distraction. It is about building a life that reflects your values instead of your impulses and your priorities instead of your circumstances. Throughout this audiobook, you have explored a blueprint for creating that kind of life. You have learned that organization begins in the mind before it appears anywhere else. You have seen the importance of clearing mental clutter, living intentionally, designing supportive environments, directing your time, building reliable systems, and finishing what you start. You have learned to protect your attention, eliminate habits that create disorder, establish grounding rituals, simplify unnecessary complexity, transform goals into actions, remain resilient during difficult seasons, manage your energy wisely, and raise your personal standards. Each of these lessons is powerful on its own. Together they create something even more valuable, a framework for living with greater discipline and purpose. They remind us that success is rarely the result of a single breakthrough. More often, it is the result of countless small decisions made consistently over time. The quality of your future is being shaped by what you repeatedly do today. Perhaps the most important lesson is that organization is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming the best version of yourself. It is about removing the obstacles that prevent you from using your time, energy, and talents effectively. It is about creating conditions that allow your strengths to flourish. The goal is not perfection. The goal is progress. The goal is not to control every aspect of life. The goal is to create enough order that you can focus on what truly matters. There will be days when your plans go smoothly and days when they do not. There will be moments of confidence and moments of doubt. There will be seasons when progress feels fast and seasons when it feels slow. This is normal. Growth is rarely a straight line. What matters is not whether every day is perfect. What matters is whether you continue returning to the principles that move you forward. Remember that discipline is not punishment, it is self-respect in action. Every time you honor a commitment, follow through on a responsibility, or maintain a positive habit, you are proving to yourself that your goals matter. You are building trust in your own ability to lead your life. Over time, this trust becomes one of your greatest strengths. The organized life is available to anyone willing to practice these principles consistently. It does not require extraordinary talent, exceptional intelligence, or perfect circumstances. It requires awareness. It requires responsibility. It requires the willingness to make small improvements repeatedly, even when immediate results are not visible. These small improvements may seem insignificant in the moment, but they compound, they accumulate, they create momentum, and eventually they transform the direction of your life. As you leave this audiobook, do not focus on changing everything at once. Choose one principle that resonated with you and begin there. Clear one area of clutter, establish one useful habit, create one simple system, protect one important priority, then build from that foundation. Lasting change is not created through overwhelming effort. It is created through steady action. The life you want is not built in a single day, but it is built daily. Every organized thought, every intentional choice, and every disciplined action becomes another brick in the foundation of your future. With patience, consistency, and commitment, those bricks will become something remarkable. The blueprint is now in your hands. What you build with it is up to you. Choose clarity over confusion. Choose discipline over distraction. Choose progress over excuses. And most importantly, choose to become the architect of a life defined by purpose, order, and lasting success.